Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Jacobson. I'm the author of Space is Open for Business, which is now available in Korean from Books. And oh, awesome. And my special guest and co-author, we're going to do a little interviewing with each other, is Dr. Soyeon Yi, who's speaking to us, I think, from Washington State. And she's the author of I'll Wait in Space, which is available from Wisdom House. And hopefully that's the correct
Correct.
translation.
Hello, everyone. I'm Soyeon Yi, and then I'm the first Korean astronaut from South Korea.
Thank you. And one thing I had asked a friend last night about a friend who's Korean. I said I noticed that sometimes people's last name, especially Koreans, get pronounced differently. And he said, yeah, a lot of Americans will sometimes pronounce Yi when it's pronounced E. They see
Yeah,
the Y in English, so it is E. And hopefully for the folks that might be, maybe the Korean Americans or Koreans outside of Korea will also get to see this video today. So I want to thank the folks for helping produce this. This is kind of a first, doing a translated video. So Yan, tell me about your childhood. Like, what got you into, I guess, what you got into science and engineering? Because as I've read about you before, Korea is still very traditional conservative culture, and I imagined when you were growing up in like the 80s, it probably wasn't super common for girls to go into engineering. Is that and then
yeah,
maybe not 80s. Well,
correct.
eventually you're probably in college in the 90s, but
Yeah, it's correct. Actually, I grew up in a little bit boundary of the farming area. It's suburban, but more like rural areas and kind of like that. So not that many women are working in the engineering field or tech field at the time. Of course, nowadays even not that many in Korea or around the globe. But yeah, so at that time, I've never thought about I will have a career in STEM field, or I've never imagined or dreamed about space because yeah, my dad working for the Farmers Association, kind of like a co-op company. And then my mom was the housewife and then taking care of the three kids and grandma, we all together. So I'm in very traditional Korean Confucianism culture. But my dad was kind of nature-born engineer, even if he worked in a bank and then Farmers Association for 30 years. But I can feel it because he always fixed the car by himself and fixed the boilers in my house and then fixed all my toys is broken. And it's really interesting watching. And then I was number one assistant always, and then just holding the tools and waiting for his calls and then hand it over to him. And whenever we fix something and it start moving, it's like a boilers, bicycles or cars, and makes me so excited. And then that might be unconsciously rolling in my head, and then I feel excited and interested in STEM and science and technology. But I've never had a kind of cool dream to be a scientist or engineers. But I realized that I love math and science, and then grow up. And at that time, maybe most of you guys knows that it's a boom, economic boom in Korea, 1980s and 90s, and government strategies kind of growing the more STEM labors in around the nation, and started the science high schools, and then many engineering schools are newly born around that time. And I got to know that, and I entered to the science high school is kind of government gifted programs and government subsidized program only because I can get a scholarship. And under that, our family's financial status, and then whoever get the scholarship should go for it. And that's very interesting background, but that helps me a lot. And I was so lucky because many of students, they come this field and then science high school because of same reason, but some of them are not interested in science or STEM at all, and then they just left it for a while. But I realized that I love it, so I was quite lucky.
did you have any mentors or particular teachers or other friends when you were in high school, or who helped keep you kind of motivated or inspired?
Yeah, of course, and then especially for the studying in STEM field, I think friends are big, huge influence. So always around the teenage time, and then friends are most influencing environment among the kids. And thank God I was in a gifted program during my middle school for the especially science and math. And I was surrounded by the all kind of cool, actually not cool, but anyway, genius and then nerdy friends around me. And they always keep talking about science and careers and going to the engineering school and then kind of like that. And then I just brainwash it. So maybe let's go there and then let's do together. And then let's go same science high school together. And then let's go same college together. And that kind of things are driving. So thank God I have a friend who has interest in that field. And unfortunately, my mom and dad, they never been in college, especially my mom, she never been in middle school, even high school, because she grew up under the very traditional farmer's dad. And my granddad believes that if woman educated more than primary school, she will not listen to her husband, kind of like a belief. So my mom wasn't allowed to go to any higher education than the primary school, even if her brother went to the Seoul National University and then studied even master's program on the same father, but daughter is different. So I couldn't get influenced by my mom and dad, a specific field or industry, but they always encourage me. And then especially my mom always inspired me like that. And then, you know what? I believe my dad loves me a lot, but he loves me in different way, in different culture. But I really want to study. I really want to explore the world, but I was not allowed to do that. But I don't want to love you in the same way. So please, whatever you want to do, try it and then dream big, kind of like that. And then that was really touching because many of the parents, even if they cannot feel it or they cannot recognize it, they just copycat of their parents, even if they hate them. But my mom always tried to be different. And then there was a huge influence. Yeah.
Were your grandparents alive long enough to see you go to college or graduate school? Your grand
That's the kind of sad part because my mom was the baby, kind of baby sister of my uncle. So they have a huge age gaps between them. So when I was born, already my grandma was mid 70 was age, and my granddad is already passed away. So unfortunately, granddad, who believes that higher education doesn't help women, couldn't see granddaughter became an astronaut or be a PhD, unfortunately. But my grandma, she saw me until I went to the high school and then college and then in the middle of my PhD program. Unfortunately, at the time I was in UC Berkeley abroad to study more. And then she feels so proud of that. And then so yeah, she couldn't see that I became a doctor, even if she keep calling me doctor when I was 5 years old. Yeah, that's really weird feeling. When I got a PhD diploma in my hands, I remember that my grandma called me doctor from my 5 years old. And I was a little bit sad because I cannot show it to her, proof, but that also influenced me, I guess. Yeah.
That's great. Was there a subject from school that you didn't initially embrace, or maybe you found it really, you didn't like it, that you learned to either love or learn to kind of better live with it as you were?
You know what? It's a lot.
Sure, let us know.
Yeah, you know what? Of course, I love math and science and some logical related things. I love it. And then I love my club activity in biology. So it's kind of cut the frog and then check the organs and then make the frog eggs became a real frog kind of thing, and then planting and then make them grow. And then all those kind of activities, I really love it. But especially history, not only Korean history, but also world history and philosophies and social science and politics and all those kind of things. I really hate it. Yeah. I'm even allergic. So I couldn't study hard, but I cannot help it because to take the SAT and then to get a GPA, I cannot help studying, but efficiency was quite low. Even I still remember in the middle of the high school time, I went to the history teacher. I don't know why, because I don't like the history subject, but I like the teacher because he was a really nice guy. And go to him and then so seriously consulting him, like, you know, I'm good at math and science, and I love that. And I really want to good at history and social science. But as you can see, my GPAs and grade is not that good. But frankly speaking, I always spend more time in history than the math, even if you cannot trust me. But turns out like that. So please save me.
Was,
And
was your teacher able to help you get through it? And
you
or
know what, most shocking response I've ever seen from any teacher, because most of the teacher in that case, and then they just told me like, Soyeon, you can have this kind of book, or you can change your method to study, or you can study a little bit more, you will have a threshold, and then kind of jumping like that. And then that was a very typical answer from my middle school and high school with the other subject. But those history teacher, he told me like, Soyeon, everybody has their own gift and their talent. So let's get it. You are not good at history. So if I were you, just study math, and then you can compromise your history of GPAs are down, and then you can make the math higher. Even same time spending, you will have a much better result and an outcome from math and science. So you just go for it. So you don't have to worry about it, and then you just ignore it, and then it's not the answer I expected, but he react like that. But that's very worked awkwardly, because I cannot give up history after hearing that answer. So to have a better manner to him, at least I needed to try a little bit more.
well, that's good. I'm sure your history teacher today is proud of you.
I believe so. And more interesting thing is, at that time I feel relief. Oh, thank God. I don't have to be stressful. I don't have to feel stressful with this not that good result or progress or efficient in a certain subject. But after becoming an astronaut, there was a problem, because even if I don't like, or even if I didn't mean it, or regardless of any background, sometimes I should be the representative of Korea, or I should be the representative of the whole humankind around the globe as an astronaut. And then without knowing the histories and then the kind of background, I cannot be good representative. I cannot be the good ambassador. So after being an astronaut, frankly speaking, I study history much more harder than before to be the right person, to be the right representative. And then I regret that. I should push it a little bit more during my middle school and high school.
So when say you were visiting somewhere, whether it's remotely or in person, speaking to another country, what was your go-to when you had to quickly learn a subject? Did you Wikipedia other things? What did you use to you're like, I have one day to learn about this whole country. Like
Frankly, I always take advantage of my friends in that country, because rather than the Wikipedia or Google, I really want to learn from the human's perspective and what they translated, what they recognize it, and that's always more interesting to me. So I always try to find the friends in their country to learn before going there. And always first thing is how to say hi and how to say thank you. That's the basic. And then always ask that which actions or behavior could be out of the manner, even if I didn't mean to in Western culture or Korean culture, kind of like that. But always kind of conclusion is, if you really have authentic feelings, respect, behavior doesn't matter at all, and they understand your intention. But yeah, I enjoy learning something from the live human than the text or Google or Wikipedia.
yeah. Did you ever go have you ever visited a country you're having a meal and they present something that's really different to eat? Like very new. Like what's been do you have any memorable meals?
So most exotic is in Mongolia. So they showed me from kind of butchering the lamb and then until the meat on my dish, and I can witness all those process. So I got to know where this meat's from. So not because it's awkward or strange, but because we've never checked all the way from the start until the end of the meal. So that was really interesting learning. And then I can respect more the animal's life. And then I heard what they are doing. And then they said, killing the animal is not cruel. It's the way we survive and eat all of that without throwing anything. Is the expression of the respect the animal who sacrifice themselves to make a human lives, and then all those kind of process is really interesting. So that was really most impressive meal I had.
Very cool. Speaking of Mongolia, I guess they've been setting up an analog Mars program in Mongolia, and I think it's Mongolia. And a few years ago, I saw some. I think it was during the pandemic. There was I think there was a group that maybe came to the U.S. before the pandemic, and then I saw some Zoom videos, but just really cool about their interest because they've got this, this high altitude, very remote, low population density. So probably a good place to learn how to live in isolation, and maybe as we research more off-planet survivability and living.
Yeah, not only space related, but also just looking back on my life and then thinking about the whole humanity on the earth. And then Mongolia was really interesting place because many of the part of the Mongolia live like 100 years ago under the tent and then without having the road or any automobiles and kind of like that. And I have a fortunate to stay with them for 2 days with them, like a primitive life or something kind of like that. And on top of that, I was so surprised. Many of the astronomers, they have a research project in Mongolia because all year long they have a clear skies, and that was my first time to look up to the kind of Milky Way with my bare eyes, because in Korea and US you have a lot of light pollution, so it's not easy to watch the huge white Milky Way on the sky. And that was incredible. And having several astronomers, they have their own tent and having their own telescope, and then 3 months and 6 months they stayed and then isolated in the Mongolia. And I just asked literally one of the PhD students, is it your thesis? And he said, yeah, it's my thesis. Oh my God, it's a really tough job. And that was really interesting. And also heard that they are interested in many of the space related program. And then after visiting that, I realized that, oh yeah, that would be the really good place to kind of make a simulating some isolated area or simulated a Mars environment, kind of like that. So yeah, it's very promising. And then thank God they are also knows by themselves. And then at that time I went there not because of the space related, but because of the environment related, because many of the Mongolian tribe have a hard time with the water shortage recently because of the desertification. It's really serious. And then a lot of trees are gone and plains are gone, and then desertification is bigger and bigger. But many of the non-educated Mongolians cannot aware of the environmental change. So they don't think total water is going down. They just think some tribe take their water out away from them, and then they just conflict each other, kind of like that. So we go there, how to preserve the water on the ground to planting the trees. So don't burn all the tree during the winter. And also we educated them as a satellite photo year by year, how the total water amount is shrink in the Mongolian area, and how the tree helped the water reserve better, kind of like that. And then it is really kind of interesting experience, because some of the Mongolian peoples try to understand that, and some of the Mongolians just blame other tribe and they take my water, kind of thing. So space can be used also for those countries to plan and to make a better life. So Yeah, space technology is a very interesting technology because they always keep the going and back and going and back and then take the synergy together. So it was a great learning to me. Mhm.
Did any of have they followed up in terms of the tribes that were having this intertribal conflict? Have they started to understand that this is not because of primarily, I'll just say primarily because due to intertribal conflict, but probably due to other extraneous issues, whether it's taking
Yeah.
down the trees and overuse of water and other climate change that they can't, that a small population of Mongolia unfortunately is probably not affecting. It's probably more like Western countries or Europe that are probably causing more problems for them that they can't. It's invisible, but they see the tangible.
Yeah, yeah, right. So I feel a little bit guilty because most of the civilized country made a bad influence in the environment, but victim is a totally opposite side of the earth. That's a really serious problem. I feel so guilty. And also I feel so proud of one organization is the Korean-born organization, but they are very eager to keep the desertification in Mongolia. So many of the UN-supported NGOs are going into the Mongolia to help the desertification, but without educating the local people, just one-time visiting and one-time planting is gone away during the winter. So one of the Korean organization, they feel so pissed off because they bring the thousand of the tree and then planting and then growing. And during the winter, crazy cold winter, they just came back to Korea and take the 2-3 kind of month vacation because they don't have anything to do during the winter with a tree. And then going back and all the trees gone because during the cold winter, they just burn up small little baby tree. So first intention is they just want to protect their planted a tree to educate the Mongolian people, but that became better and better and then influence more. So they can even build some small little scale of the forest in the middle of the Mongolia. So one of the UN recognized this NGO and then they got awarded. And then Korean TV want to make a documentary about that NGO. And I follow that TV documentary as a MC and a visitor and an interviewing. And then more interesting thing is at the time it's right after my flight. So I still have a Russian language. And I realized that many of the old scholars in Mongolia, they can speak Russian because they are under the Soviet Union era. So I can have a communicate a little bit more effectively than the other Korean kind of MCs and visitors and producer kind of like that. So I learned a lot. And yeah, so Korean NGO, they are doing really good job and then they educating and then they give me the idea like how about as a national you can show the satellite photo to them and educate them. It's not because of a conflict of the tribe, but because of environmental change. And then yeah, that feels so kind of honored and happy to do that. And still they are working on Mongolia to keep the desertification out of the country. And then still they are gathering the volunteer from not only from Korea, but also outside of the Korea, and then go to the Mongolia together and planting the tree. And then each people has a sponsoring the trees and then build the forest. And then I think it's really meaningful and then proud as a Korean person.
Excellent. Is there an educational component that's still ongoing in Mongolia that you know of, or in terms of whether it's schools, schools teaching or helping adults, who are maybe they're a farmer, but improving the way that they can do their do what they do better as
I don't know if they keep doing the continuous program or something, but when I visit together, they visit the school and also teach the kids about that and then environmental change and then that kind of thing. But I cannot be sure if they have a continuous program or something.
Okay. Yeah, and I think it's a good segue that, space can be used for so many things that even a place like Mongolia, which maybe in our lifetime, maybe they're not going to launch rockets or things of those sorts of activities, but there's many other ways they can take involved of space technology, whether it's using satellite data to improve planning and management of resources, or having analog space missions so they can bring in researchers and future astronauts and other types of people to test, equipment, especially in remote environments.
Yeah, so that was really kind of good opportunity for a lot of the country like Mongolia, because nowadays it's a little bit easier to access the space data than before, because until 20, 30 years ago, if government doesn't have enough money to build the rocket and satellite, and then to have a money to operating the satellite, and they cannot get any data at all, actually. So it was very dominated by the big, huge several countries. But nowadays, data is quite, I cannot say totally, but relatively more kind of equate and then equal to everybody, and then cheaper and easier to access than before. So hopefully those underdeveloped or developing country, they can take advantage of the space data and space technology than before. And so I believe commercial space era and then space industry can help more country and more global humanity than before.
Yeah, and especially as the planet continues to change and we have a big human population of over 8 billion people, the more types of data, more granular data, and whether it's through Earth observation, radar imaging, we'll be able to better live. And we already do this. And I'm hearing now about countries that are acquiring small satellites, or I don't know if they're buying them or leasing them, but essentially they're not even developing it. Another organization, a commercial entity, has the ground operations. They do the launch, the satellite, and basically they just say, well, here, you get to choose where you want it to be positioned and how you want it to be used in an affordable way, or more affordable way for
much more affordable way. And then like the Mongolia and other country, they have their own resource to share to other developed country, like Mars exploration monologue, and then those kind of thing. And African countries or some other southern hemisphere country, they have a different characteristic of the northern hemisphere. So all those kind of resources can share each other. So even if Mongolia cannot pay the money, but they can pay with the resource with the empty land and then clear sky, kind of like that. So hopefully those mutually beneficial project will go on more.
So going back to your home nation of Korea, what would you like to see? I mean, it's for the past 15-ish years, Korea's been investing more in the greater aerospace side. It's not even just space, but what would you like to see? Do you see any gaps, or what would you like to see further investment of money, energy, that to further grow the industry, to further grow that I'll say industry, but it's a sector because it's both government activity and commercial activity.
So I think we had a lot of development, because when the Apollos goes on and when the kind of Sputnik goes on, and those 40, 50 years ago and 70, 80 years ago, Korea even cannot afford to feed their own people. And we don't have any mindset in space technology at all. But from the late 1980 until now, and we launched a lot of satellites and also built the rocket. And then, oh my God, from the scratch until the successful rocket launch is incredibly speedy than other countries. So in just 5 years, they build it and then launch it and then successfully kind of make it orbit. And then that was incredible. So for now, I think until now, I believe Korea is kind of having the learning curve. So they just understand what the rocket is for, and then what the satellite is for, and then how we can prepare and build, and then what kind of human resources we should raise and grow, and then what kind of financial or technology resource we need. And then they just collecting the data, I guess, as a kind of like not only textbook study, but also in a lab study, and then you just do the hands-on activity, kind of like that. So from now on, we needed to be more serious about what field and what sector we are better at than others. So I believe not only as a human, every individual have their own gift and a talent and characteristics. So they find their own career and way based on their characteristic. So I believe country also same. So no matter how big and a rich country, they cannot do everything. So they are good at certain part and they need some outsourcing from other country. So Korea is the same, but sometimes the Korean people are so competitive. They want to be number one everywhere, but it's impossible. So I believe Korea should find their own niche and their own talent and gift and take advantage of their creativity and take advantage of their own citizens kind of advantage of that. And we will find our own position and value proposition in a space industry. That's the time that Korea should focus on rather than just following other country.
Yeah, and it seems I think they've had is it the Nuri rocket? It's launched it's launched once, right? And I guess it looks like they're still looking for some indigenous domestic capability of launch.
Right. Yeah.
And it's interesting in the news. I mean, I guess just as we're recording this interview, North Korea attempted to put a satellite. I think it made it to orbit, but from what I read, this is just the headlines. So that it wasn't, they don't think it was able to do very much. So not very capable, I guess, from a technology perspective. And I guess, so like Korea's always kind of like always concerned. It has, it's like your brothers and sisters in the North that are, in a very unfortunate situation. They have an authoritarian regime.
It's very interesting dynamic. So you know what? Sometimes North Korea is even worse than total foreign country because of the politics and some kind of ideology related things and kind of like that. But sometimes they are our family because still many of the Koreans has a family in North Korea. So of course I hate the leader of North Korea. I hate some kind of strategy and philosophy of North Korea, but I still love the North Korean people who is the total victim of the bad leadership kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of sad. So sometimes I have kind of metaphor to my foreign friends, like, you know what? I feel like North Korean people like alcoholic uncle's cousin. So yeah. So you know what? Every single family, they have a troublemaker uncle or aunt, but they are not in a good shape and we cannot love them, but their kids are innocent. So we should take care of them and protect them, even if their parents not in a good shape.
Yeah,
so
it's not their fault.
Yeah, I feel like that. Yeah. So yeah, I still have a compassion and a passion to help the North Korean kids and next generation. And I strongly believe there in North Korea also kids who wanna dreamed about to be an astronaut or dreamed about to be the rocket scientist or something kind of like that. So whenever some people ask me what's your one of the bucket list, and then I always said that, yeah, I really want to go to North Korea to have a speaking engagement about my space flight to the North Korean engineering school student or high school student, because it doesn't mean I love North Korea. It doesn't mean I'm a fan of the North Korean ideology or politics, but it means I love the innocent people in North Korea as a part of the family member. So, and I feel responsible as a normal aunt should take care of the kids of the crazy uncles.
Have you had an opportunity? Has this opportunity started yet, where you've heard conversations about how to do
it's really hard, and then even harder for the well-known and popular South Korean people. So
more difficult. I thought it would be easier.
Yeah, no, even harder, because visiting North Korea sometimes is the kind of showing like a fan or love North Korean strategy. So many of the celebrity or popular person are so careful any action to help or do something with the related with North Korea. And also depending on what kind of parties and what kind of administration is occupying in South Korea, sometimes we can do some kind of humanitarian action with North Korea, but sometimes we cannot do anything with North Korea depending on the administration. So it's really tricky. So if I'm just one of the Korean and if I'm just one of the Korean American, nobody knows me, I can't even go to North Korea as other country's citizen with a visa or something kind of like that. And still Americans can visit North Korea as a travel package or something kind of like that, as I know. But as the well-known person, it's really careful. So I'm trying to find all the opportunity and things, but I don't want to make a bad influence, and then so it's a little bit tricky.
Okay. Okay. So what's exciting to you today? Like what currently, what are some of the areas of whether it's business or as you've seen things progress in the space industry, what are the areas that really interest you, even if you're not, investing, your time in there, but what kind of is fascinating to you?
Yeah. So thanks to joining the healthcare startup nowadays, and then I'm more cautious and then interested in about the global health issues and global public health problems, kind of like that, especially the company No I'm working with for now, and then we are developing the diagnostic platform and decentralized diagnostic platform. I feel so impressed by the founders of that startup because they really want to use the high innovative technology to take care of and helping the people who is underserved area like Africa and Southeast Asia or isolated region of the US and Europe and Korea like that. And on before joining that company, I didn't know that many people's killed because of the malaria. Because in Korea, we
Right?
don't have,
Millions. Isn't
yeah,
it millions?
yeah, millions. So in Korea, we don't have many malaria at all. And malaria related news is not spreaded a lot like a COVID related because all the victims are in the low and middle income country. So when I joined that company, I was so shocked because every year the people killed by the malaria is more than the total people who killed by COVID.
Wow.
Yeah.
Every year.
Cannot believe it. You can believe it. It's shocking. And then I just look back myself. Why you didn't know that even that many people are killed? Sometimes only 3 people are killed because of the spacecraft landing. Everybody knows it, but millions and millions of people died. Nobody knows. And even recently, some people raised the issue like 10 millionaires are killed by the submarine travel package. Everybody knows it. But thousands of the people in a refugee boat is sinking. Nobody knows it. And it's really sad, but it's the reality. It's the reality on the earth. So I'm more keen to and interested in that kind of issue. And then I'm responsible for that as a person who looked down to the earth from the distance. And then thinking about the humanitarian issue in the space station, because where we were born is not the choice of us. So you were born in US, I were born in Korea, it's just happening. But some people believe that that's the thing, they just earn it. But it's not the things to earn, it's just happening. So the kids who were born in the middle of the Afghanistan, kids who has a kind of freak out under the war field in a kind of nowadays the country Ukraine and North Korea, they cannot help it, but they have a totally miserable life for whole life. And then some kids who are born luckily in a well of the family, they can drive Mercedes even from the high school, and they never ever be grateful or they never ever be satisfied with anything. And that's really sad. So I really want to do something, even if I'm not a Bill Gates, I'm not a rich people, but I always believe that there should be something we can do, and there should be something we can change a little bit of that. But thank God I'm working with this company and developing the malaria diagnostic platform and then cartridge and kind of like that. And we are helping them to diagnose this earlier and then more correctly. And to do those kind of business, I cannot help watching the statistics and how many people are killed and how many people are suffering in certain country to go there and then to check in. And that's not only feel sad, but also feel proud because we are doing something on there. and I feel responsible to spread the words and make the people know that somebody's over there, even if people treat them like invisible.
Are there other diseases outside of malaria that you and is it Noel? How do you pronounce
Oh
it?
yeah,
Noel?
we want to tackling the also cervical cancer, because woman health is also
Cervical
huge.
cancer?
Yeah. So woman health is a huge issue, especially not only because of the financial status of the country, but also religious culture of the country. It makes a serious problem of the woman related, and then gender related disease like that. So we also want to take that kind of things the next step to helping the woman around the world with a more affordable price of the checking and an easier way to do that. I really love that kind of roadmaps and then compassion and then vision for that. And then as I learned from current status of our product and also the business teams, and then they realized that certain country, even if they can afford it, but only because of the cultural aspect, woman cannot go to the OBGYN to take a regular screening. If she does, everybody look at her like she's a kind of naughty woman like that. And then if the woman has a problem with any kind of reproduction organ, they just treat them like those women are not in appropriate sexual relationship, kind of like that. But it's not at all. But it's a culture. So all those kind of things are really interesting to me, because I also feel grateful because I grew up in Korea. We have a better recognition of the woman health, and we have a better recognition of the public health. So I got a lot of benefit of the governmental health insurance and an affordable price for all the health systems. And then I realized that Korea has a very kind of, how can I say, unique health system. But unique means not the good or bad. It's very unique actually, but in a good way. So more affordable than other countries and more systemic than other countries. But when I just isolated in the same country, I didn't know that if this is different from other country or not. So maybe many of the Americans also feel same that, because you just live and whole life is in there and then stuck in there. Even if you travel around the globe, you never had a problem with your health related outside of the US. You never have any chance to learn about other countries' health system. But once you learn it, you realize that what's the problem in your own country thing and what's the problem of the other country thing, and you can compare, and then there's a room to improve. So yeah, that's very interesting aspect.
Yeah, there's another book, and this is unconventional part, but a friend of mine wrote this book. He's a geographer by training. I think he was the head of the American Geographical Union. He's a venture capitalist too, and he's done some stuff related to space, named Dr. Christopher Tucker. Great guy. And he wrote a book called The Planets of 3 Billion. And it's really kind of a controversial book, but he looked at the science and said, what is the sustainable population of Homo sapiens on the planet Earth? And it's about 3 billion to keep it things pretty status quo, or in good shape, and we're at close to 8 billion. But when you dig into the book, and there's lots of I don't know if he's done any talks in Korean, but what the summary is that one of the key things to do to help solve some of the human population issue is that it's providing education to women in places like sub-Saharan Africa, parts of Asia. And education, and specifically with women, is such a powerful tool, because women will then figuring out things like how many children to have, careers, and that, and just that bit it's a big issue, but educating women in these places would help basically over time really reducing to a more sustainable population.
Yeah, and then also we needed to point out that to make the woman educated, we should educate male first. Because the most of the country, where the woman cannot have enough education, the control and decision making done by the man. So like my mom, she even wanna study more, but only because of her dad, she wasn't allowed to go to the middle school and high school. and in many of the Middle Eastern countries in Africa and Asia, many people just see the result of the problem. Women needed to be educated, but what is the kind of block and what is the bottleneck? It's the man who has a control. So we needed to educate men appropriately first, and then those men should give the education properly to the woman. That's the sad part.
Yeah, it's that culture, because some of these, tradition is it's a double-edged sword. There's so many beautiful things about our traditions of humanity, but we also have these traditions that some, like you were saying, your, I think it was your maternal, your mother's father, your grandfather, who wouldn't allow your mother to do certain things, or he had a belief about you, whatever these things. And I'm sure there was many men, it's not just your grandfather, right?
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
And probably
So
even
I
today.
literally see that because luckily and unfortunately, thanks to being an astronaut, I have much more opportunity to travel around the globe to have a speaking engagement. And in one of the Middle Eastern country I went there, many of the men believes that we don't educate women to protect them.
Say that one more time. That's almost pretty powerful.
Yeah, they just believe that, and then we don't educate, and then we don't give them a job opportunity to protect them because they should be safe inside of the house. So outside of the house is a dangerous place ever, like a jungle. So they believe, but even if it's not logical to us, if you grow and raise for a certain period of the time and brainwash it, they strongly believe that. And then even in the middle of the conference, those Middle Eastern, some leadership guy in front of the podium, you know what? I'm proud, can tell you that now all the women in this country can go to the college. So finally we made it. And then kind of is so proud. And then we all think like, then for what? Even if they are not allowed to get a job. So once they graduate the college, what they are doing. But in that country, women still cannot drive and a woman still cannot get a job after college, then what for? So we shouldn't see just one aspect of the program. Women should be educated more, because what blocked the woman educated? What's the next level? So it's very complicated problem.
Thank you for sharing. What is your, what would be your impression of now? Well, I think first it was UAE, United Arab Emirates, and then it was the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia that sent astronauts. And it was interesting. There was a female sent. What was your impression of that? Do you feel that it was authentic? And authentic that they really want to try to create more equality before them? Because I've heard that there are still more. Women are allowed to do more in parts of the Middle East, like in Saudi Arabia. There is a lot of room for growth. It's still not, even culturally in a family, they can, a husband can tell the woman, like, you can't leave the house, or you have to dress a certain way, and,
Yeah. I don't care if that is authentic or not, but that kind of event and happening is a huge meaning to the female society in the country, because even if it's not authentic, the girls who watch the TV and then see the female astronaut, their future will be different. So sometimes we have way too more debating than we need. So is it authentic? They really want to do something for the woman. Still, it's not enough. And still guys are kind of hypocrite and then they act like that. But finally, they don't allow women, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. But anyway, it's a huge step to make in public, we sent a woman to the space. I think that's the meaningful. And then even if it doesn't change a lot around in 5 or 10 years, but after 20, 30 years, girls 5 years old watching the TV, female astronaut on the TV in ISS floating, their future will be different. So I think it is really something.
Yeah. And then going back, I want to go back, shifting gears to some of your research that you did when you were on the International Space Station. I think there was like 18, 20 experiments. Were they all experiments that were developed internally in Korea? And you weren't the PI, but you were the
Yeah, I
facilitator.
wasn't a PI. I was just kind of actor, and then the experiment person who taking care of the experiment. So not only for an astronaut, but also for a space experiment, we had a competition. So they open and release the RFPs, and then more than several hundred proposals coming into the Korean government, and they form the committee and then review the proposals, and they distribute to the evenly to the all different industry and field, like several biology, several chemistry, several physics, several electric, kind of like that, because it's the first ever Korean program. And also they try to find the right person who is the PI who can take care of that and responsible for that, and a good insight of the space activity, kind of like that. So yeah, it was the kind of the competition also. And I should be trained by every single PI before going to space, how to properly take care of the experiment. And then that was really a great opportunity for me to learn and then understand about the space experiment.
Were there any that you followed up with, or just say as any of the research, follow-on research years after those experiments were flown, or
So,
just hear about any of the progress in those disciplines?
so some of the maybe around 1/3 or half of the research PIs at that time I've worked with, they did their best to follow up as much as they can. But one really most saddest part of my space flight is my flight was not a long-term government plan, but the short-term 3-year project, very temporary project. So officially government doesn't support any follow-up or any later experiment for those scientific research. So that's one of the sad part. Hopefully, I wish and I did my best to convince the government to keep doing that, but at the time they have a different interest and a different budget plan, kind of like that. And then one of the tricky part political is my those 3-year space astronaut program in Korea, first 2 years under the former administration, and the last 1 year is under the new administration. So they really needed to have some kind of remodel of the systems, and then budget plannings are change it, and then some of the leaders doesn't want to follow up the former leaders strategy, kind of like that. So it's a little bit systemical problem, and also temporarily research projects problem, because it's harder to follow after because of the budget and then money problem. So but I feel so proud of that. Several PI of the research, they really want to do the follow-up, and then they find the other sourcing of the fund, and then they try to do their own internal budget to do that. So yeah, especially Nuclear Research Institution of Korea, they keep doing some related research, and some biology related research, especially governmental national lab, they have their own internal small budget and then try to do that. And one of the Air Force hospital doctor, he also want to try to keep doing as a doctor, a flight surgeon in Air Force. So thank God they have their own budget for the aerospace medical research fund. So yeah, not officially keep doing that, but separately and then personally they try to do that. But hopefully Korea, even if they don't want to send the astronaut in the future, but I hope they can keep doing the human space flight program and research more. But for now, it's a little bit holding.
What type of tools did you get to use when you were doing them? Was it simply turning it on, pressing a button? Did you get to go into a glove box? What did you
So it depends. Some of the reaction and a chemical reaction thing, I just needed to turn on and waiting for a certain time and turn off, and then taking the tube of the sample and then bringing back to the earth and then give it to the research, and then they can analyze, and then that's all. But some of the experiment, I can do more hands-on activity, like mixing it and then taking care of that, and then taking the photos and moving around the location and kind of like that. Well, some of the activity I should do by myself, and then kind of playing with that and then moving with that. So it depends, all different kinds, because it's the first ever Korean program, they really want to do the variety of the experiment together in same time.
Have they did the space agency, the government ever do any follow-up health checks with you? Like just curious, like 10 years later, hey, how are you doing?
My flight surgeon, because he's the flight surgeon, he
Okay.
tried to do that personally and then with his own institution budget. He did for 2-3 years,
Okay.
not by the space agency or government-wise. Yeah.
He just used his own funds, internal funds.
And then
Okay.
he does feel responsible as a flight surgeon of the
Okay.
astronaut. So I really admire and respect his action after that. Yeah.
So from that, from your, this is kind of a great, not just being in space, but really afterwards, are there things that you see in terms of what we're going to need to be able to do for humanity to thrive better in space, even though we have a handful of individuals that will spend more than a year in space? That's not that, I mean, a year, okay, a year goes by pretty quickly. And if we're going to talk about doing things like living on the moon or building cities in space, let alone the topic of Mars, which is millions of miles away, not a few, the moon is only a few 100,000 miles away, or about about 1,000,000 kilometers, a little less. It's, we're going to have, it seems like there's a lot we have to learn before we're going to have families in space or hundreds of people in space. And so what are some of your observations that you kind of, from your own personal opinion, doesn't have to be on any of your own research or anything, just your opinion.
I think especially for the first time to explore and frontier to build up the community is really important to have a right combination of the team. So yeah, after for a while, you have a mutual community, you have a self-diagnosis and self kind of system to make your systems healthy, kind of like that. And even if some totally nonsense members out there, you have a system to control like that. But when the frontier to the moon or out of the earth, and then everybody has a kind of risk of the life and risk of the life and death threat. And if you have just one crazy people, it's enough to kill everybody. So that's the really serious problem, because I deeply sympathize with that opinion when I was in training in Russia. And one of my old senior, very experienced instructor, he told me, like, no matter how reliable system we build and no matter safe spaceship we built, just one crazy person is enough to blow everything up. Wow. But I think you understand also, because whatever good thing happened, destroy all is a crap. Rebuild is crazy hard, always. And one crazy people is enough to destroy everything. Not even spaceship, but even your good house or any kind of society or any kind of community or organization. One crazy people is enough. So especially the early stage of the building the community outside of the earth, and then a lot of dangerous things happen. We don't have enough resource and we don't have enough safety net over there. Then right combination and reasonable people who face the totally unexpected situation should be calm, and it can be the calm. And those kind of combination of the crew is really, really cruel and important, I guess.
Did they do any experiments or tests on you to make sure that you weren't crazy for you as you were,
yeah, definition of the being crazy is quite complicated. So
I'm not saying crazy. I guess probably they're saying under duress, or could there be something that would be this person would remain calm and wouldn't panic? That's
so not only Russian,
I was joking earlier.
Not only Russian, but also all the space agency who having an astronaut program, they all are cautious and concerned about that. And then you cannot say one person is crazy all the time, because not that many people are crazy all the time. We always need a trigger. So some people they sleep deprived and then they totally act differently. Or some people just feel starving and they act so differently, became hangry. And some people, they are stressful with their own goal. And then in the middle of the kind of stressful situation in their own job, and they became totally different person. Like, yeah. So everybody is kind of like an X-Men, and we just change our identity at certain situation. So during my training and also selection, and people's always tested and tried if those candidates are calm enough and patient enough in certain extreme environment exposed and kind of like that. I think it's really important, because no matter how well educated, no matter smart they are, if they are triggered with a little less level of the stressful situation or something, they became totally different identity. So think about you, and then you as a
I get hungry when I'm really hungry, I get hangry.
yeah,
Yes.
and then also not only because of a physical situation, but also because of the environment. Like many of the women's and men's, they act totally differently when they are just one of the member of the company, or when they are mom, or when they are dad, or especially with the teenagers dad, and then you are totally nice guy in the office, but when you meet your crazy teenage son who tried to something totally crazy, and then you became same crazy person when they debate each other. So everybody has that kind of trait, but we needed to be selective to find the first crew and first community, not to destroy everything.
Yeah, yeah. Did they ever do anything fun, like not fun, in part of your training? You know, I guess there was survival training. So I always think of survival as a little like camping with less supplies, maybe, depending on what you have.
Yeah,
So
kind of. Yeah, kind of, but depends what situation you have. Because in a camping, there's assumption that all your families are healthy and all your families are supportive and kind of like that. But let's say we have some survival situation during the reentry, then one of the crew could be injured, or one of the main person who cannot do anything, and then it's a totally different situation. But as an honorary Air Force member, I joined the survival training of the Air Force survival training. At that time, I realized that astronaut survival training is much easier, because astronaut survival training, we have assumption that whoever we met, even totally stranger, we assume that they are supportive, they are helping us. So
okay,
if we are landed in the middle of the Kazakhstan, or if we landed in the middle of the Africa, we assume that all the people who met us as a total stranger, we can ask them help.
okay,
As a military survival, you always cautious. You are surrounded by the enemies. So you better not ask help, or you should check if they are really helper or not, or kind of like that. So when I experienced that survival training, oh my God, it's much more complicated. So astronaut survival training was a piece of cake compared with the military survival training. So it was a very interesting experience.
wow, I didn't think about that. So, and you went through essentially the military Korean version, right?
Yeah, especially pilot version. At that time, I was the honorary pilot of the Air Force right
Yeah.
after the flight, and then just kind of promoting and then helping the Air Force. So I joined the survival training of the F-16 pilot, and that was a really interesting experience. Yeah. So we cannot even fire certain time to eat something, because that can be the sign for the enemy to find us. And then, but in astronaut training, we can make a fire anytime, any place to survive. So, oh, it's totally different regime.
Where did you where did you do your most of your survival training for the astronaut side?
In Russia, yeah.
Russia, okay.
But one sad part is my sea survival was done in Black Sea in Ukraine.
Okay.
Right. But we cannot go there anymore.
Yeah, was the water I don't know what was the water temperature like of the Black Sea?
It's not that bad, because luckily we had a sea survival around the August. It's
Oh,
way too hot
so
rather than the cold. Yeah.
so I guess if you're wearing a lot of equipment, then you'd sweat and yeah. Interesting. So, kind of wrapping up with some stuff. What are some? Do you ever enjoy science fiction? You were telling me you've got this photo, the Star Wars photo, but it's your husband's. He's a big fan of Star Wars. But is
Right.
there any was science fiction growing up at all in your life?
Unfortunately not, because I grew up in a rural area, especially around the late 70s and early 80s, and Korea cannot afford all those kind of science fiction or TV and movie theater around my area. Of course, at that time also, my friends who grew up in Seoul area as a metropolitan citizen, they had a Star Wars and they had a sci-fi every night at the TV, but I couldn't. So science fiction doesn't influence me a lot during my teenage and childhood, but after becoming an engineering school student, of course I love science fiction and I watch a lot of movie. But the debating over the Star Wars is some people believe it's a sci-fi, some people believe it's totally fake story because it's not scientific at all. But yeah, I love science fiction. Yeah, I love. And then my husband confessed to me like most biggest disappointing part of me after marriage is I've watched Star Wars before. So and then he told me like, Soyeon, if you really wanna keep your business, especially in a space field in US, you should watch Star Wars first. So we watch it together, and then nowadays I can join the Star Wars costume around the Halloween. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I kind of probably describe Star Wars more in the fantasy area that happens to be
And
on other planets. Um, have you watched any series like The Expanse? Uh,
um,
there's a show called The Expanse.
oh, I couldn't watch yet.
Um,
Sorry.
it's pretty good because I don't like the future it portrays. It's a few hundred years in the future. It's sort of dystopian, but some of the science they try to get much better in terms of the microgravity or
Oh.
just the way technology. They have people living on asteroids, and the people that live on the asteroids tend to grow a lot taller.
Mm.
They have these really tall looking people, but if they come back to Earth, they don't do very well because
Oh,
they can't.
that might be possible. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's some scenes where there's a group, and I won't say who it is. It's a surprising group. Uses that as torture. They bring someone back and they have them against the wall, just hanging in one
Oh,
G because they grew up in a micro or less than 1 G on an asteroid. And so from a technology and some engineering, you might appreciate just some of the. It's one of the series or movies. It started as a book series and then went to a video series that's just getting it a lot closer.
oh, yeah. You reminded me of the movie called The Space Between Us. And then that is also a boy who was born outside of the Earth. And then he came back to Earth, and then he's cardiovascular is a problem with the high G, kind of like that. And that was really interesting also. Yeah.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of work. We don't even know if humans are going to be able to
Yeah, right. Yeah.
reproduce if
But also, you know what?
in,
Most the hardest part is we cannot even experiment. Very ethical
yeah,
issue.
not
Yeah.
yet. Yeah, that's definitely. I mean, I know they've taken some mammals, non-human mammals, like I think rats and maybe a rabbit, I think, but I don't know in terms of any reproductive
And
studies
then think
what's
about that.
been
Even if
done.
somebody signed a waiver and then somebody volunteered that, is it really ethical? I don't think so, because baby who will be born doesn't have a right to sign, and it doesn't have any kind of express of the willing. So it's very complicated. But I'm as a scientist and as a kind of engineering people, I'm so interested in, but also as a human, I don't think it's the right way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need a lot more study and maybe simulations. I don't know. Maybe this is where we can use some supercomputing.
Yeah, yeah. And then or if
You
we
know,
can build the community really in your future, and then it just happening, then it's not an experiment. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, people forget about these things. We want to say that we want millions of people in space, and I would love to see that too. But but we need to figure out some of the ethics. We need to be understanding and have good debates regarding that before we put people into situations that they didn't ask to have any, they didn't have any opinion on.
Yeah, so there's a lot of interesting and curious things will happen, and then especially those commercial space era expediting all those activity than before. So I'm so looking forward and I'm curious about that.
So do you think if you had the opportunity to go back, would you go back on a commercial space station or something like that?
Why not? Why not? If I can have opportunity.
Why not?
Yeah. Yeah, my flight was way too
And
short, and then it was under government, and especially under the Korean government, and the schedule was so pretty packed.
did you have any time to sleep?
I had officially, but not much. So, and then you know what? One of it, I hope and wish that was a joking, but one of the higher official in Kari, he told me like, yeah, we talking about the schedule, and then all the Russian official came to your schedule is not the common sense, so make it shrink and then don't disturb our astronaut. Those current astronaut schedule can affect the Russian and American astronauts schedule, so blah blah blah. And then after all the meeting is done, and then he just came to me like, so human, even if you don't sleep for whole 10 days, it's not killing you, so you can do it.
Oh, so he's just propagating work really hard,
And then you
There's
are
only
first as an
100
astronaut, and then serve for the country, and then kind of like that. So I really wish to have a little bit more relaxing space travel again.
Well, here's a question you might not remember unless you wrote it down. Do you remember ever having dreams? Because you know how you can dream, sometimes you have a really good night's sleep and you don't remember even dreaming because you sleep really well. And then sometimes
Yeah, many of the people ask exactly same question to me, even before flight. So during the preparing the flight in Kazakhstan for 2 weeks, and did you have any good sleep, and did you have any dream right before big huge event? And during the flight, did you have any kind of dream? But I'm not that kind of person who remember the dreams. So for whole year, I remember only 2-3 dreams, and then it's not that common thing. So I thought I might dream, but I cannot remember. But I'm not that person who kind of many dreams every night, kind of like thing. Yeah.
maybe you were just thinking about, oh my gosh, all this stuff I need to do when I as soon as I open my eyes.
Yeah.
It kept you very, very, very busy.
Yeah, but even if it was busy, I'm so honored and then very feel kind of good and happy because thanks to the busy schedule, I could have a more variety and then variables and experience up there. So that's also positive side of that.
If you want to share a little bit about your book, I'll Wait in Space, I would love, do you have a copy you can hold up on you, or you don't even have?
Yeah, let me see. I have.
Okay, great.
Yeah, compare with your book, my book is much smaller and cute.
Well, they're different. Yours is a memoir, kind of, from what I'm understanding. They're different.
Yeah, so it says, I'm waiting for you in space, kind of like that. And then they love a colorful and a shiny design like that. And then
It's really cool. Is that kind of let's see again, it's kind of got like I love the little pattern, the with the star, and the heart. It almost has there's ambiguity. I see a heart, but I also see kind of like almost looks like jeweled stars.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, they really want to make it cute and then trendy in Korean public, kind of publication market kind of thing. Yeah, but I can confess that it's a little bit too late because I plan to publish about my space flight kind of 2-3 years later after my space flight, but I couldn't find not only time but also energy, because right after flight I was way too busy with every day has 4-5 times a speaking engagement around the whole nation, and also almost every month has a abroad trip to as an ambassador of the space agency, kind of like that. And in same time to write a book, maybe you also agree with that, and I needed some time to look back and think and regurgitate all the things in my mind, but I couldn't have that time and energy at all for several years after my space flight. But now it's almost 15 years past, and I'm afraid to forget because some of the memories is a little bit biased or some modified because your mental health tried to making better and then making your memory more happier than real and kind of thing. So I'm scared about that. So even if the same things happen, every single member in there, they remember differently, right? So yeah, I don't want to make my book is total fantasy or imagine of my things. So I believe I shouldn't delay anymore. So should start from now. And then even if I can make another books to have a sub side of the story, at least I should make a one book of the selection process until the getting back. So yeah, it was kind of long-term project, even if I didn't do actively before.
Did you end up reconnecting with any old friends or colleagues when you're writing it to sort of say, I think this happened, but can you
But
help?
thank God I wrote a diary every day.
Good. So
So
you had notes. You had good
yeah,
notes.
so I can check my diary, and also I have a series of the columns in Korean newspapers, and also I have my own blog website. So I write almost every day real time at the time. So I just combine all of that, and then some part, if I cannot remember, I go back to my journal and diary first. And then if it's not clear, I try to reach out to the person who are there with me and then checking with them.
Awesome. Have you, what was the, there must, since this was your first book, but you had done some writing before, was there something surprising that has come out from this new experience of releasing the book?
You know what? Actually, some of my readers are a little bit disappointed because they expect more hidden story and a more exciting story behind the scene. But only because it's my first book, I tried to make it more calm and mild, and then series of the fact more than the emotional reaction of mine. So one of my friends keeps saying that you should publish another version of that to talk about all the behind the scenes story. And then maybe I can think of it, but not right now.
Well, that's cool. And so yeah, it was kind of cool. It was my first book in Korean, so I had
Yeah, I had one.
if you're able to go back and you can bring something or someone along with you, let's just say your husband's going to come along with you to keep it fair, but you can bring also a guest or something. Have you thought about who you would want to bring with you to come back to have that experience?
If I can pick, I really want to pick the person or characteristic or job or titles never been in space before. Like because until even now, most of the astronauts are combination of the military or scientists or engineers. But even military guys, they all have a academic background as a science or technology, or a doctor who is also part of the scientists and engineers. So I would love to bring some kind of like athletics or artist or kind of like person who would never been in there, because actress and actor is already in the O because I heard Tom Cruise want to go there, and I heard already Russian actress up there to have a movie filming, and maybe one of the tourists is the IT guy, and then one of the tourists was the circus person, kind of like that. But I
Yeah.
haven't heard that any athletics or Olympians in space or any kind of artist like a painter or poetry or writer never been there. So I really want to bring those totally different category of the people and then watch the reaction and then has a sharing the experience or reflection together, because I'm totally different animal than them. So I'm curious about that.
Awesome. Well, we'll try to wrap this up because I want to be cognizant of our time. So, if I get this right, Dedani 감사합니다.
Thank you. Oh, good. Yeah.
And it was a real pleasure today having this conversation. So to wrap up, my guest here today was Dr. Soyeon Yi, Korea's first astronaut and the world's 475th
Yep.
human astronaut. That doesn't count, we also had many non-humans like our dogs and other animals that have visited as well. And we are speaking today about a number of pretty wide-ranging topics.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was super fun.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you so much. I enjoyed a lot about this conversation. And then it's not only about the book, it's not only about space, it's about the humanitarian things and then all different kind of aspects. It was fun talk.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You have a wonderful days and weekend.